"She locked you in the basement?" I said, heart pounding. But what crushed me wasn't Emily's whisper. It was the sound of that bolt scraping shut behind her. My own sister had chained my daughter up like an animal, and then smiled in my face, called it drama, and warned me I could lose custody for causing trouble. She'd planned this, used her perfect reputation and her lawyer husband to flip the system against me. But Janet forgot something. She's not the only one who documents everything. Emily stayed near the window like I told her. She knew I was coming, and I didn't come empty-handed. Because when a father hears his little girl whisper, "Please don't make her mad," he doesn't wait for permission. He builds a case, and Janet's about to find out what I've been preparing for all these years. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm 45 years old. As a single father, every choice I make revolves around keeping my daughter Emily safe and giving her the stability she deserves. Our kitchen carries the familiar rhythm of weekday mornings, coffee steam rising beside the wall clock's steady tick, Emily's neatly arranged shoes waiting by the door. My sister Janet lives in one of those perfect suburban houses, always ready with helpful advice that sounds sweet but cuts deep, especially when she compares Emily's upbringing to her daughter's. What Janet doesn't know is that I've kept meticulous digital records of everything: conversations, receipts, photos, all carefully dated and stored. When my work deadline tightened, sending Emily to stay at Janet's seemed logical. After all, family called it the safest choice. I felt the chill behind her welcome smile, but ignored it, because blood ties can blind you to truth. But let me start from the beginning. I'd just finished loading the dishwasher when my phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Rain pelted the windows, making that nervous ticking sound that usually puts me on edge. The clock read 12:17 a.m. Emily's name lit up my screen, and something in my gut twisted. She never calls this late. "Dad?" Her voice came through so small, I had to press the phone harder against my ear. "Dad, I need help." "Emily? What's wrong, sweetheart?" The metal taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth as I heard her breathing quicken. "Aunt Janet?" She dropped to a whisper. "She locked me in the basement. There was an accident with Sophie's project, but I didn't mean to." A creak from above made her voice catch. "Someone keeps walking past the door." My hand started shaking. "Are you hurt?" "No, but—" She swallowed hard. "Please, Dad, I don't want to be down here." The scrape of a bolt being checked made her fall silent. I was already grabbing my keys and wallet, snatching the thick manila folder where I keep screenshots of every concerning text and email from Janet. You know how they say prepare for the worst but hope for the best? Well, I'd been preparing for years. "Stay on the line with me, baby," I said, forcing my voice steady as I rushed to the car. "I'm coming right now." The drive to Janet's usually takes 40 minutes. I made it in 25, riding the shoulder past semis when traffic slowed. Rain hammered my windshield while I rehearsed what I'd say to Emily. "Stay calm. Daddy's almost there." And what I'd say to Janet. Those words weren't nearly as gentle. Emily's tiny pleas kept echoing in my head, along with that sound of the bolt being checked. Like she was an animal they needed to keep caged. The thought made my grip tighten on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I texted her at a red light. "Stay near the small window by the washing machine. Keep your phone on silent but line open." She sent back a single thumbs-up emoji. When I pulled up to Janet's curb at 1:47 a.m., my heart was trying to punch through my ribs. The porch light cast yellow shadows across their perfect lawn. You know the type. Not a single dandelion allowed to survive. Inside, a deadbolt clicked, followed by harsh whispers. Climbed the 3 steps to their door, rain soaking through my shirt. As I raised my fist to knock, the upstairs light snapped on, bright and accusing against the night sky. Every nerve in my body screamed to break down that door, but I held myself in check. One wrong move now could make things worse for Emily. Sometimes being a good father means swallowing your rage and playing smart, even when every instinct tells you to do otherwise. I've seen a lot of painful things in my life, but nothing prepared me for hearing my daughter locked in a basement. Remember when I said blood ties can blind you to truth? Well, they can also make betrayal cut twice as deep. And standing there on Janet's porch, I knew this night would change everything between us forever. Ever had someone you trusted completely show you their true face? It's like the ground disappears under your feet. But here's the thing about falling. It teaches you exactly what you're made of. And I was about to show Janet exactly what kind of father she was dealing with. The door swung open, and there stood Janet with that $1,000,000 smile she'd perfected over years of suburban politics. You know the type. So polished you could see your own reflection in it. In this case, I saw my anger bouncing right back at me. "Danny," she cooed, like I was an overexcited child at a birthday party. "What in the world are you doing here at this hour? Where's Emily?" I kept my voice level, though my jaw ached from clenching. Janet's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in theatrical concern. "Oh, honey, did she call you? You know how teenagers can be. So dramatic about everything these days. She said you locked her in the basement." The words came out like stones. "Locked in the—" Janet's laugh tinkled like expensive wine chimes. "Danny, she's playing you like a violin. We had a little disagreement about Sophie's science project, that's all. You know how competitive girls can get." The stairs creaked behind her, and Tom appeared in his monogrammed robe, all 6'2" of country club confidence. "Daniel," he rumbled in that courtroom voice that probably scared the hell out of junior associates. "This is highly inappropriate. Do you have any idea what time it is?" My phone vibrated in my pocket. Emily's text. I didn't need to look to know she was listening, terrified, somewhere in this house. "I want to see my daughter." "She's asleep," Janet said smoothly, tilting her chin toward the upstairs hall. "Like everyone should be at this hour." Another vibration. I slipped the phone out just enough to glimpse the screen. "Please don't make her mad." My stomach lurched. What had Janet done to make Emily this afraid? I took a step toward the hallway, but Tom's manicured hand shot out, pressing against my chest. "Now, Daniel, let's think about family harmony here. There are proper channels for addressing concerns." Proper channels? The metal taste was back in my mouth. "Like calling the police to check on my daughter?" Tom's smirk could have chilled wine. "Weaponizing authorities against family members? That could look very unfortunate in court." "Daniel. Very unfortunate indeed." He adjusted his robe's lapel. "Especially combined with this late-night outburst." My eyes caught on the basement door behind them. White paint scuffed near the jamb, like something had been installed recently. A soft clink echoed up from below. The unmistakable sound of a chain dropping against concrete. I wanted to tear through them both, rip that basement door off its hinges. But Tom was right about one thing. An outburst was exactly what they wanted. Every muscle in my body screamed to move, but I forced myself still, remembering Emily's text. Making Janet mad now could mean worse for Emily once I left. "We all want what's best for Emily," Tom continued, warming to his legal monologue. "But trespassing, disturbing the peace, these behaviors raise concerns about stability, Danny. Serious concerns." The motion light above us clicked off, suddenly, plunging the porch into darkness. In that moment of black, I heard what they weren't saying. They had me cornered. One wrong move, and they'd use the system against me. The same system that was supposed to protect Emily. As my eyes adjusted, I caught movement at the basement window, a small shadow shifting in the darkness. Emily. My heart clenched knowing she was down there, watching, waiting for me to fix this. But sometimes being a father means playing the long game, even when every instinct screams for immediate action. "We'll talk about this tomorrow," I managed, each word tasting like surrender. "When everyone's had some sleep." "Wise choice." Tom nodded, already closing the door. "Good night, Daniel." I backed onto the wet grass, eyes locked on that basement window. The shadow moved again. Emily's hand pressed against the glass, then quickly withdrawn. Thunder rolled overhead, drowning out whatever curse I muttered into the rain. I trudged back to my car, rain soaking through my jacket. Ever since Emily was little, I'd kept detailed records of everything. Doctor's visits, school meetings, even playground incidents. Some called it paranoid. Tonight proved it wasn't paranoid enough. You know that saying about preparing for the worst while hoping for the best? That's not just advice. It's survival. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and started documenting. First, time-stamped photos of the basement window, making sure to catch the security light's reflection so you could tell it was night. Then Janet's house number clearly visible in the frame. My finger hesitated over the camera button as another shadow moved behind that window. Emily was still watching. I opened my notes app and typed out everything while it was fresh. Janet's exact words about Emily being confused. Tom's threats about weaponizing authorities. The sound of that chain in the basement. Even wrote down what they were wearing. Janet's silk pajamas. Tom's monogrammed robe. Details matter when you're building a case. The timestamps would match the call logs and Emily's texts. Speaking of texts, I pulled up our conversation and typed, "Red umbrella." Emily and I had come up with that code when she was 8, right after a close call at the park with a stranger. If either of us ever sent those words, it meant danger was real. No games, no exaggeration. The response came back instantly. R. My throat tightened. One letter meant she couldn't type freely. Someone was watching. Rain drummed against the roof as I dialed the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher's voice was tired, uninterested. Without clear evidence of immediate danger, this sounds like a custody dispute, sir. You'll need to contact Child Services when they open. My daughter called me crying, said she was locked, which the guardian disputes, she cut in. If there's no visible distress or signs of violence, we can't intervene. Family court handles these matters. Family court. Where Tom practically lived. I could almost hear his smug voice warning about unfortunate behaviors. I ended the call and killed the headlights, pulling down the block where I could still see Janet's house. The smart play was waiting it out, documenting everything, and hitting Child Services the moment they opened. Tom wanted me to lose control, give him that outburst he could wave in front of a judge. Not happening. Not with Emily's safety on the line. I spent the next 5 hours drafting my report on my laptop, running on cold coffee and colder rage. Every detail laid out in clear, unemotional language. Emily's midnight call, verbatim quotes, timestamps, photo references. I even noted the fresh scuff marks on the basement door frame, suggesting recent hardware installation. The sky started lightening around 5:30. I watched sprinklers pop up on Janet's perfect lawn, hissing away like nothing was wrong. A school bus rumbled past, empty seats glowing orange in the dawn light. It hit me that Emily should be getting ready for school. Right now, eating breakfast at our kitchen counter, complaining about her hair. I gave it 5 more minutes, praying for another text from Emily. Nothing but silence. My phone showed 6:03 a.m. when I pulled up the Child Services website and booked the first available appointment. 9 a.m. 3 hours. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and started rehearsing. Led with facts. Stay calm. Don't let emotion derail the narrative. Emily's call came at 12:17 a.m. Janet denied access at 1:52 a.m. Tom made verbal threats regarding court action at 1:55 a.m. The basement light flicked on. I sat up straighter, pen poised over my notebook. Even the smallest detail could matter now. The Child Services office smelled like old coffee and copy paper. You ever notice how places built to help people always feel so damn sterile? I sat across from Ms. Peterson, watching her flip through my documentation. Her reading glasses caught the fluorescent light as she paused on each page where I'd highlighted basement and locked. My folder was thick, screenshots, photos, timeline notes, everything laid out like inventory at a hardware store. Clean, organized, undeniable. And you say your sister installed new locks recently? She asked, tapping a photo of the scuffed door frame. The marks are fresh, I said, keeping my voice steady. Emily's never mentioned being locked in before last night. She made another note. And your brother-in-law. He specifically mentioned legal consequences. Said calling the police would backfire. That pushing the issue would have consequences in court. I pulled up Tom's text history. He's sent similar messages before, always careful with his wording. He's an attorney. Knows exactly how to threaten without crossing lines. Ms. Peterson's pen scratched against her notepad. The wall clock ticked past 9:45. Every minute felt like an hour with Emily still at Janet's. Well, Mr. Mercer, I'll conduct a welfare check immediately. She stood, straightening her blazer. Please wait here. I nodded, relief starting to loosen my shoulders. Finally, someone would see the truth. But then I caught it, a whisper from the hallway. Janet Whitman's niece? The one who runs the Children's Foundation? My stomach dropped. Of course Janet's name would surface. She'd spent years building her reputation in this town, hosting charity galas and sitting on boards. The perfect aunt with the perfect house who'd stepped in to help her struggling brother. The whispers continued. Pillar of the community. Such a concerned aunt. Takes in foster kids too. The door opened, but it wasn't Ms. Peterson who entered. A tall woman in a charcoal suit introduced herself as Dr. Hammond, department supervisor. Her smile was practiced, professional. Reminded me of Tom's courtroom face. Mr. Mercer, she said, settling into the chair. We understand you're under considerable stress. Your work schedule, single parenting, it's a heavy load. This isn't about stress, I said. My daughter called me. Children often struggle with changes in routine, she cut in smoothly. Acting out, making accusations. It's natural for a father to worry. But we have to consider stability. The word hit like a hammer. Stability. The one thing I'd built my entire life around. After reviewing the situation, Dr. Hammond continued, we believe it's best for Emily to remain with her aunt pending a brief inquiry. Janet provides a structured environment, and maintaining that stability is paramount right now. My mouth went desert dry. You can't be serious. We are quite serious about children's welfare, Mr. Mercer. Her tone sharpened slightly. Your sister has an exemplary record with child services, multiple foster placements, glowing recommendations. The side door opened. A second caseworker appeared with Emily beside her. My daughter's eyes were red-rimmed, her jaw clenched tight. She wouldn't look at me. "Emily!" I called, starting to stand. She flinched, actually flinched at my voice. Her eyes darted to the window, where Tom's BMW idled behind Janet's SUV. "Mr. Mercer," Dr. Hammond warned, "please respect the process." "Process?" I snapped. "My daughter called me terrified last night, and we're investigating those claims appropriately." She gestured to the caseworker. "Please escort Emily to her aunt." I followed them into the hallway, watching helplessly as they led Emily toward the exit. Each step felt like someone was twisting a knife in my chest. "Emily, honey." I tried again. "Sir." The caseworker blocked my path. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Through the glass doors, I saw Janet hop out of her SUV, arms wide for a picture-perfect hug. Emily's shoulders stayed stiff as stone. I stood on the front steps, concrete swaying under my feet like a ship's deck in a storm, while the SUV's blinker clicked left and carried my daughter away. Tom's BMW pulled out behind them, her guard dog, making sure I didn't follow. The morning sun felt wrong on my face, too bright, too normal for a world that had just turned inside out. 7 days. That's how long I'd been hitting walls with, "We'll get back to you." And proper channels take time. Every morning started with the same routine. Check messages, send follow-ups, document the silence. You ever notice how professional courtesy can feel? Like a weapon when it's used right? I kept my old work notebook by the phone, logging every call with military precision. Time, date, who I spoke to, what they promised. Most pages just showed strings of unreturned voicemails. Janet's influence ran deeper than I'd realized. She had friends in the school board, connections at the community center, even ties to Emily's dance studio. Every door I knocked on seemed to close a little faster. "Mr. Mercer," the school counselor said when I stopped by. "Family matters are delicate. We have to let the process play out." She shuffled papers on her desk, not meeting my eyes. "Perhaps try speaking with your attorney?" That was Tuesday. By Wednesday, I'd mapped out Janet's whole social web. She ran charity auctions, hosted garden parties, sat on half the boards in town. People didn't just know her, they owed her. And now those debts were getting called in one closed door at a time. I tried keeping my emails strictly professional, timing them to business hours like clockwork. The responses, when they came, always hit at 4:59 p.m. Too late to reply, designed to drag things out another day. Classic lawyer trick. I could practically see Tom smirking while he clicked send. Thursday night found me parked down the block from Janet's house, watching porch lights wink out one by one. The massive Tudor sat there like a fortress, windows glowing warm yellow against the dark. Somewhere inside was my daughter, probably doing homework at the kitchen island where Janet always set out fresh-baked cookies. The perfect aunt's perfect house. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel. Then the letter came. I still remember the weight of that envelope, heavy with official letterhead. Inside was a single sheet setting the custody hearing date, 30 days. Just like that, the clock started ticking. You know that feeling when time suddenly becomes solid? When every minute feels like it's carved in stone? I stood there in the kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum where Emily's laughter used to bounce off the walls. The sound had a rhythm to it now. Tick, tick, tick. I grabbed a red marker and circled the date on the fridge calendar. 30 days. To build a case, gather evidence, and somehow cut through Janet's wall of influence. The empty squares stared back at me, each one a reminder of time slipping away. That night, I spread everything out on the dining room table. My call logs, email threads, photos from that night at Janet's. Good documentation, but not enough. Not yet. I needed more. Something concrete that even Janet's money couldn't smooth over. Process must play out, they kept telling me. Fine. I'd give them a process. Clean, methodical, documented down to the minute. The kind of record that would stand up in any courtroom. I grabbed a fresh legal pad and drew up a bullet list. Evidence needed. Witnesses to find. Every angle to pursue. The blank page looked back at me, waiting to be filled. 29 days left. The refrigerator kept humming its countdown in the dark. I thought about Emily's voice that night, trembling through the phone. About her stiff shoulders and Janet's perfect hug outside child services. My daughter was sending me signals, and I'd be damned if I'd let some calendar beat me to helping her. The bullet points waited. Time to get to work. I spent that second week building my case like I was assembling one of my precision machine parts at work. Methodical, clean, every piece documented. No room for emotion or speculation, just facts lined up in chronological order. You know, what it's like trying to capture a gut feeling on paper. Like trying to photograph wind. Everything that screamed wrong to my father's instincts just lay there flat in black and white. My dining room table became command central. Call logs fanned out by date. Photos arranged by timestamp. Even a diagram of Janet's driveway showing when cars came and went. I'd written out Emily's midnight call word for word, stripped of any dramatic language, just the facts. Time, duration, key statements. Reading it back felt wrong somehow. Too sterile, like I was describing someone else's crisis. I remember the day I went to request the body cam footage from the welfare check. The clerk's face had that practiced blank look, like she was already reaching for the no stamp before I finished talking. Those materials aren't discoverable at this stage of the investigation, Mr. Mercer. She slid a form across the counter. You can file this request for consideration. My hand actually shook when I took that paper. Here I was, Emily's father, having to beg for permission to see proof of my own daughter's distress. Makes a man feel small, you know what I mean? The case supervisor's office smelled like fresh coffee when I walked in with my binder Thursday morning. Everything organized, tabbed, ready for review. She barely glanced at it. Mr. Mercer, she said, folding her hands on the desk. Have you considered connecting with our parental stress resources? Many single fathers find them helpful during emotional periods. The coffee smell turned sour in my nose. There it was again, that subtle twist that painted me as the problem. A concerned father becomes an unstable parent with one careful word choice. I forced my breathing steady, kept my voice level. I'd appreciate a written status update on the investigation. Of course, that practiced smile again. We'll have something for you soon. Soon. They'd been feeding me that word like a tranquilizer for days now. Soon meant whatever they wanted it to mean. Next week, next month, after it was too late. Walking out of that county building felt like carrying lead in my shoes. I sat in my truck, watching some kid on the basketball court across the street. He had this routine: dribble, shoot, chase the ball, repeat. No one to rebound for him. The rhythm of it caught me. That lonely determination. I pulled out my notepad and wrote one question. What would convince a judge in 15 seconds? Not documentation. I had plenty of that. Not character witnesses. Janet had those locked down. I underlined the question twice, letting the ink bite into the paper. The answer hit me like that basketball hitting the chain-link fence. I needed motive. Not just proof of what Janet did, but why. No judge would buy that my sister suddenly turned cruel for no reason. There had to be something bigger driving this. Something that would make a courtroom sit up and take notice. I flipped to my calendar page. 23 days left. The word motive went down in red ink, right next to the custody date. I stared at those letters until they bled into the page, watching that kid take shot after shot in my peripheral vision. What makes a trusted sister lock her niece in a basement? What turns family bonds into prison bars? Those questions would lead me somewhere. I just had to follow them in the right direction. The third week hit like a slow-motion train wreck. Every morning I'd wake up thinking, today's the day someone listens. By sunset I was swallowing another not available, or check back next week. You ever watch hope drain out through your shoes? That's what it felt like. I tried Janet's neighbors first, the Hendersons next door. They'd lived there 15 years. Had to have seen something. Mrs. Henderson opened her door just wide enough to show her face, clutching her cardigan like I might snatch it. I'm so sorry about everything, she whispered, eyes darting toward Janet's house. But we really can't get involved in family matters. The door clicked shut before I could remind her she'd brought Emily birthday cupcakes every year since kindergarten. Funny how fast family becomes a wall people hide behind. I sat in my car, scribbling her response in my notebook, my 1000th dead end. Emily's words kept echoing. After an accident. What kind of accident sends a kid to the basement instead of the emergency room? What accident needs a lock and a guard at the door? The courthouse archives ate up a whole afternoon. I paid for every document with Janet's name on it, hoping for, hell, I don't know what. A pattern? A crack in her perfect suburban mask? All I got was property records and some charity board minutes. $200 for papers that wouldn't convince a traffic court judge. That night, I couldn't even pretend to eat right. Just stood at the counter pushing cold pasta around my plate, listening to the kitchen clock mock me. Tick, tick, tick. Each second feeling like it belonged to Janet now. You know what scared me most? I caught myself rehearsing what I'd say to Emily when I lost. How I'd explain that sometimes the system beats good people, that I tried my best but couldn't. The fork clattered against the sink. No, that's what Janet wanted, that slow surrender. I'd rather burn than hand her my white flag. But standing there, watching dirty dishes float in gray water, the truth bubbled up like sewage. I was terrified, not just of losing the hearing, but of losing Emily forever. Of becoming that dad who only sees his kid on supervised visits, watching her grow up through a bureaucrat's clipboard. I gripped the counter edge and said it out loud. I'm gonna lose her. The words hung there like poison smoke until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably another caseworker with their professional sympathy. Daniel Mercer, I answered, too tired to fake politeness. Danny boy. The voice was gravel wrapped in leather. Familiar but just out of reach. Mark Reeves here. Remember that transmission you rebuilt for my daughter's car? Oh, 6 years back? Mark, former detective, retired after 30 years on the force. I'd fixed his kid's beater Toyota when she started college. Refused to take his money. Course I remember, I said, straightening up. Sarah still driving it? Got her through graduation, he chuckled. Listen, I heard through some old channels about your situation. About Emily. My throat closed up. Here it came. Another "so sorry" speech. I've seen cases like this before, Mark continued. Wealthy relative, connected husband. Suddenly they're saints, and dad's the unstable one. But Danny? Yeah? 5 words cut through the sink drip like a blade. I believe. Emily, I'm in. Ever notice how diners at 5 a.m. feel like confessionals? Just fluorescent lights, coffee steam, and tired men speaking truth in low voices. I'd been in Mark's favorite booth for 10 minutes when he slid in across from me, manila folder tucked under his arm like old times. First rule, he said, waving off the menu. We follow money, not feelings. Feelings make noise. Money leaves prints. I nodded, wrapping my hands around a mug that could have been warmer. Where do we start? Tell me what Emily might have seen. Mark pulled out a tablet, screen scratched from years of police work. Any unusual activity at Janet's place? Changes in routine? The question hit something loose in my memory. Last month, Emily helped Janet clear out her attic. Said Janet was real specific about which boxes to bring down. How specific? Emily mentioned Janet got upset when she opened the wrong one. I tapped my spoon against the mug, called it private paperwork, and sent Emily to help her cousin instead. Mark's fingers moved across his tablet. Family like Janet, they usually set up trusts for the kids. Tax purposes. He turned the screen my way. Public filings show 3 accounts, 1 for each of her daughters, plus Emily's. Emily has a trust account? Your parents set it up before they passed. Janet's been managing trustee since then. Mark's eyes narrowed. Give me dates for that attic project. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through texts. Saturday, March 12th. Emily was there Friday through Sunday. Mark circled something on his legal pad. Look here. Trust balance reports. See that gap? Numbers don't match year over year. The waitress stopped by. Mark ordered coffee, black, then waited until she was out of earshot. Here's how we play it, he said. You build me a timeline. Every interaction with Janet since January. Meanwhile, I'll draft some records requests. Narrow scope, fully lawful. Less chance of Tom blocking us. What about Emily's school? I asked. She missed that Monday after the attic. Janet said she had a stomach bug. Perfect. Call the office, verify the absence. If the dates line up, Mark paused as the waitress set down his coffee. Well, that's one more pixel in our picture. I felt something I hadn't in weeks. A clean breath. Like maybe the ground wasn't quicksand after all. But that calendar still gnawed at me. 17 days left before the hearing. Mark must have read it on my face. Time's tight, but we've got an angle. His expression hardened suddenly. Danny, you know what makes the sweetest target for someone who needs quick cash? Children's trust accounts, I said, getting it. They're just sitting there, growing interest. And who questions a trustee moving money between family accounts? Mark pushed his coffee aside. Especially if that trustee's husband handles the paperwork? I leaned in. So we follow the money. We follow the money. Mark drew a straight line on his pad. No dramatics, no accusations. Just numbers that don't add up and a basement door that shouldn't have been locked. You know that moment when an engine finally catches after hours of troubleshooting? When all the parts start moving together? That's what it felt like. Sitting there with Mark as the sun crept over the parking lot. We split the tasks. I'd compile the timeline. He'd start the paper trail. Clean, quiet, and careful. Just like fixing an engine. One step out of place could blow the whole rebuild. 17 days. One plan. No room for error. Mark gathered his papers. Remember, Danny, money tells stories, feelings can't. And money never learns to lie fast enough. I watched him drop a few bills on the table, that old detective's walk as he headed for the door. For the first time since Emily's midnight call, I felt like her father again instead of just a man drowning in documents. Mark spread the papers across my kitchen table like he was dealing cards. Each statement, each signature line told its own story. Ever notice how truth hits you differently when it's laid out in black and white? See these signatures? Mark's finger traced Janet's name across 3 years of trust documents. The J changes. Not just a little. We're talking fundamental stroke patterns. I leaned in close, something cold settling in my chest. The flowing script from 2019 had morphed into shaky lines by 2021. Could be natural variation, right? Natural variation follows patterns. Mark pulled out a magnifying glass. Old school, like something from a detective movie. These tremors? They're forced. Someone trying to copy but getting nervous. Classic forgery tells. You ever have one of those moments where the past rearranges itself? Where all those little things that didn't quite fit suddenly snap into perfect, horrible focus? I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the bank statements I'd been studying. Look at this category. Household improvements. It shows up right when the trust accounts start dropping. Mark nodded. Shell category. Classic move. How much we talking? Started small. 5 grand here, 8 there. I scrolled through the spreadsheet I'd built. Then last year, boom. 40,000 vanishes from Emily's trust, shows up as kitchen modernization. That tracks with the timing, Mark said. When did Janet start that remodel? March. The word felt like acid in my mouth. Right after Emily helped with the attic. And there it was. The picture so clear I could see it like I was standing there. Emily in that stuffy attic. Dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. Her hand lifting the lid of a plastic bin. Finding stacks of envelopes marked by year. Maybe she didn't understand exactly what she was seeing. But Janet knew she'd seen enough. God, I whispered. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. The basement wasn't punishment for some accident with her cousin, was it? Mark shook his head. Fear makes people cruel, Danny. Janet wasn't disciplining Emily. She was protecting herself. I pushed back from the table, needed to move. The kitchen clock ticked like a hammer hitting nails. She locked my daughter up because Emily might tell me about papers in the attic. About money stuff she probably didn't even understand. That's what makes it work in court, Mark said. Emily wasn't a threat because she understood the fraud. She was a threat because she could mention those envelopes to you. Janet panicked. The simplicity of it turned my stomach. No grand conspiracy, no complex scheme. Just greed and fear, wrapped up in my sister's perfectly manicured suburban life. Tom had to know, I said. The paperwork. Oh, he knew. Mark started stacking documents methodically. Probably helped clean it up. Which is why they're both so interested in keeping you away from Emily right now. I dropped into my chair. How do we prove it? We already have. Mark tapped the pile. Forged signatures. Mismatched trust balances. That shell category bleeding money right when Janet needed it. Plus Emily's testimony about the attic, if it comes to that. Will it be enough? For a judge? Mark's eyes crinkled at the corners. The closest he came to smiling these days. Courts love paper trails, Danny. Emotions are messy. Numbers don't lie. We spent the next hour photographing every document. I initialed the backs while Mark logged them in his case notebook. The kitchen clock kept ticking. 12 days left until the hearing. Family court judges have seen it all, Mark said, closing his notebook. But stealing from kids' trusts? That hits different. Especially when it leads to false imprisonment. I stared at the stack of evidence, remembering Emily's voice that night on the phone. The fear, the confusion, the betrayal. But now I understood what I was really hearing. The sound of my sister's perfect mask cracking. So we've got her, I said. Mark nodded once, decisive. Now a judge will listen. The school counselor's office felt like a fishbowl. All those glass walls letting everyone watch while pretending not to. Emily sat across from me, picking at the sleeve of her sweater. 15 minutes. That's what they'd given us. Try breathing through a coffee straw sometime. That's what those 15 minutes felt like. You know what kills you as a parent? Watching your kid try to be brave when they're scared stiff. Take your time, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice gentle. The counselor scratched notes in the corner, pretending to be invisible. Just tell me what you remember about helping Aunt Janet in the attic. Emily's fingers twisted harder at her sleeve. There were these plastic bins. The clear kind, you know? With snap-on lids? I nodded, thinking of the transfer dates Mark had highlighted. What was in them? Envelopes. Lots of them. She glanced at the counselor, then back to me. They had years written on them, and names. Tommy's name, and Sarah's, and mine. My throat tightened. Tommy and Sarah, Janet's kids, Emily's cousins. Their trust fund accounts lined up perfectly with the suspicious transfers Mark had found. What happened when Aunt Janet saw you looking at them? Emily's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She got really quiet. Like that scary kind of quiet? A tremor ran through her hands. She said curiosity ruins families. That some things should stay in boxes where they belong. The heat rose in my chest. That protective, father rage that makes you want to kick down doors. But I couldn't let it show. Not with the counselor watching. Not with everything hanging on keeping this conversation clean and admissible. Do you remember what day that was? I asked. Though I already knew. Mark's financial timeline had the spike marked in red. It was a Saturday. We had pancakes first, because Aunt Janet always makes them on Saturdays. Emily's eyes went distant. Then we went up to help clean the attic before the contractors came for the kitchen. Perfect. The timeline locked into place like a key turning. I wanted to hug her right there. Tell her she'd just handed us exactly what we needed. Instead, I kept my voice steady. You did good, Em. Real good. The counselor cleared her throat. Time's up. Emily's shoulders hunched as she stood. Dad? She paused at the door. Are you going to fix it? Count on it. I met Mark at his place that evening. His dining room looked like a war room, papers spread across the table in precise rows. Emily's story fits perfectly, he said, adding notes to his ledger. Janet sees her with the envelopes, panics, and 2 days later, we get that 40 grand transfer disguised as contractor payments. How do we lay it out for maximum impact? Mark tapped 3 spots on the table. Sequence is everything. First, we establish motive. Janet's money troubles, the temptation of those trust funds. Then method. The forged signatures, the shell categories. Finally, we drop Emily's attic discovery right when Tom thinks he's got the procedural angles covered. I could picture Tom's face already. That smug lawyer mask cracking. He'll try to tangle us in technicalities. Already handled. Mark patted a thick envelope. Complete chain of custody on every document. Let him try to procedural his way out of that. We spent hours refining the reveal. I kept working on my closing statement, whittling it down from 15 words to 10, making each one count. Sometimes the simplest truth hits hardest. Back home, I laid everything out on my dining room table like a general plotting a campaign. The calendar on the wall marked our countdown. 7 days, then 3, then 1. Each X felt like a drumbeat getting louder. At midnight, I stood in my bedroom ironing my court shirt, watching the iron's temperature light blink on and off. Red to nothing, like a pulse counting down the hours until morning. You'd think I'd be nervous, but all I felt was ready. Ready to show the world exactly who my sister really was. Ready to bring my daughter home. Ever notice how a courtroom feels like time decided to hold its breath? The air gets thick with possibilities, and every little sound, papers shuffling, chairs creaking, seems to echo straight through your bones. I pushed through those heavy wooden doors at exactly 8:45 a.m. My evidence binder balanced like a carpenter's level against my chest. You learn in construction that being perfectly straight matters. 1 degree off, and the whole structure can fail. Same principle applied here. Tom was already working the room, chatting up a bailiff like they were old fishing buddies. That easy lawyer charm of his, spreading like oil on water. But I'd spent enough years watching people work job sites to know the difference between someone building something real and someone just putting up a facade. Janet sat behind the counsel table, ramrod straight in a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She had that concerned aunt mask firmly in place, the same one she'd worn when she told child services I was unstable. The sight of it made my jaw clench, but I kept my face neutral. Today wasn't about anger. It was about facts. When they called me to testify, I moved with the same steady pace I use approaching a tricky weld. No rush, no hesitation. Just the rhythm of someone who knows exactly what needs doing. Please describe the financial irregularities you discovered, the judge said, peering over reading glasses. On page 4 of Exhibit C, Your Honor, you'll find trust account statements from March 15th showing unauthorized transfers. I kept my voice as level as my old spirit gauge. The signatures on those transfers don't match the authorized samples from previous years. The judge's pen scratched against his notepad. Be more specific about the dates and amounts. Yes, Your Honor. April 23rd. $40,000 moved from the Children's Trust accounts to a shell category labeled Home Improvements. The timing matches perfectly with Emily's documented visit to Janet's attic, where she witnessed Tom's chair squeaked as he straightened. But I stayed focused, laying out each piece of evidence like setting stones in a foundation wall. The forged signatures, the matching renovation invoices that never led to actual work, each exhibit landing with the solid thunk of truth. When Mark entered his notarized statement about the signature variances, I watched Tom's jaw muscles dance. A retired cop's expert opinion carries weight, especially when it's backed by 30 years of document forensics. The facade was starting to crack. I saved Emily's supervised visit statement for last. Not for dramatic effect, I'm not much for theatrics, but because it was the keystone that locked everything else in place. Her simple description of finding those envelopes, followed by Janet's threat about curiosity ruining families, suddenly made the basement imprisonment look very different. A rustle went through the gallery, the kind of sound people make when they're trying not to make a sound. The judge removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and looked at his watch. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," he announced. "Counsel, in my chambers." I rested my palms against the smooth oak table as Tom and the county's attorney followed the judge through that heavy door. The wood felt cool and solid, like truth itself. 20 years of building things had taught me that good materials don't lie. They either hold or they don't. Janet's perfect posture had finally cracked a little. She sat with her hands clasped so tight her knuckles showed white, staring at that closed chamber door like she could will it to stay shut forever. I forced myself to breathe slow and steady, the way you do when you're waiting for concrete to set. Everything we'd built, the evidence, the timeline, the motive, was in that room now. Either it would hold together, or it wouldn't. The clock on the wall ticked forward with mechanical indifference. Each second felt like a year, but I'd learned patience the hard way. Some moments you just have to let cure properly. When the door latch finally clicked, the sound rang through the courtroom like a hammer strike. The bailiffs' all rise cut through the silence like a saw blade through pine. I planted my feet and straightened my back, the way my father taught me when facing important moments. The judge settled into his chair with the kind of deliberate movement that tells you decisions have been made, and they're not the kind you argue with. Having reviewed the evidence presented, he began, his voice carrying that weight judges get when they're about to reshape lives. "This court finds immediate cause for concern regarding the safety and well-being of minor children in the custody of Janet Walsh." My heartbeat steadied. You know that feeling when you've been holding your breath without realizing it, and suddenly your lungs remember how to work? It was like that. Effective immediately, Emily Mercer is to be removed from the Walsh residence and returned to the full custody of her father, Daniel Mercer. The judge paused, letting that land before continuing. Furthermore, all guardianship rights previously granted to Janet Walsh regarding any minors are hereby suspended pending full investigation. Janet's perfect posture finally crumbled. She seemed to fold in on herself, like a house with its support beams pulled out. Funny how someone can look so small once their power's been stripped away. But the judge wasn't finished. Given the financial evidence presented, particularly the expert testimony regarding forged signatures and misappropriated trust funds, this court is referring the matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into charges of fraud and forgery. Remember what I said about Tom's lawyer charm? It evaporated like morning dew when the judge turned those reading glasses his direction. "And counsel," there was steel in the judge's voice now. "This court takes a dim view of attempts to discourage valid complaints through legal intimidation. The transcript of Mr. Walsh's threats regarding consequences will be included in the referral package." The whispers started then, spreading through the gallery like wind through dry leaves. You could almost see Tom's reputation withering in real time as the other lawyers in the room edged away from him. Reputation's funny that way. Takes years to build, seconds to break. A court clerk appeared at my elbow with custody paperwork. My hands had shaken through most of this ordeal, but now, signing those papers, they were rock steady. Each signature felt like driving a nail home, securing something that should never have come loose in the first place. Emily was waiting in the hallway with a social worker, the good, kind, the one who'd helped arrange our supervised visits. When she saw me, her eyes asked the question she was afraid to voice. I just nodded, and 20 pounds seemed to lift off her shoulders. "Ready to go home, kiddo?" She didn't answer, just slipped her hand into mine like she used to do when she was little. Some gestures say more than words ever could. We walked out into ordinary afternoon sunshine that felt anything but ordinary. Could have taken my truck. It was right there in the parking lot. But something in me needed to walk. To feel solid ground under my feet again. Emily seemed to understand. She'd always been good at reading my moods that way. We took the long way home, past the corner where that old cherry tree stands. It was in full bloom. Probably had been for a week. But I hadn't had the heart to notice until now. Fresh petals drifted down around us like nature's own celebration, dotting the sidewalk with little splashes of pink and white. Emily's hand tightened in mine, and I squeezed back. Looking up at those blossoms, catching the late afternoon light just so, I found myself saying the only thing that felt true enough for the moment. Trust betrayed can still be rebuilt stronger. She nodded, and we walked on toward home.